Hello friends, and welcome to jwreasoning.com. It's time for the annual meeting 2020. This is part one. Tony Morris is the anchor for this particular event, or I guess you would call him the chairman, and he begins the opening remarks. I'm going to let you hear just a few minutes of that for context, and then we're going to look at one specific thing, a Bible verse that he goes to, and let's see if what he says is true.
Welcome. This is JW Broadcasting for January 2021. On Saturday, October 3rd, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania held its annual business meeting via video conferencing. In normal times, after we care for that necessary business, we share spiritual encouragement in a larger meeting. However, we're not living in normal times. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to readjust our plans. However, the good news is we did not cancel the spiritual portion of the program. Annual meetings of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania have been held for many years, in fact, since January 1885. They have been held in different states in the U.S. and in 1983, in Britain. This year, 2020, the corporate meeting is being held by video conference. The spiritual program has been recorded for the benefit of the brothers all over the earth. This is a historic annual meeting. In the past, we have had some historic annual meetings. For example, at the annual meeting held on October 2nd, 1944 in Pittsburgh, the members of the Pennsylvania Corporation adopted 6 resolutions amending its charter. The charter had provided that voting shares be issued to contributors of funds to the society's work, but the Third Amendment eliminated that provision. Thereafter, directors of the society were to be voted into office by individuals who were fully devoted to Jehovah, irrespective of the amount of money that they contributed to advance the kingdom work. After the historic annual meeting in 1944, a vital question remained. Since the governing body was then closely identified with the Pennsylvania Corporation's 7-member board of directors, did this mean that the governing body could never be made up of more than 7 anointed Christians? Moreover, since the directors are elected by the members of the corporation, were the corporation members electing members of the governing body at the annual meeting each year? Are the directors and officers of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania and the members of the governing body one and the same? Or are they different? These questions were answered years later. They were answered at the annual meeting held on October 1st, 1971, another historic annual meeting. On that occasion, one of the speakers pointed out that the governing body preceded the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania by hundreds of years.
So that makes it official. If the governing body preceded the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society by hundreds of years, just the fact that that speaker said it has to make it so. It must be so. Let's listen to that again, and I'm going to let it play out.
On that occasion, one of the speakers pointed out that the governing body preceded the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania by hundreds of years. Now, contrary to some who oppose Jehovah and the earthly part of his organization and claim there was no governing body in the first century, and hence they see no need for a governing body today, a governing body was formed at Pentecost of 33 CE, more than 18 centuries before the Pennsylvania Corporation came into existence.
You know, Tony Morris, just saying governing body over and over again makes it so convincing. You're really convincing me that this governing body must have existed. You know, it's sad but true, that this is how they convince a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses that this is true. So let's look at this compelling evidence that he's going to give us right from the Bible.
At first, the governing body consisted of 12 apostles. Its number was enlarged later, for the apostles and older men in Jerusalem were taking the lead. Now notice what happened later here in the Bible book of Acts in chapter 15. So other issues had been handled by the 12 apostles, but now with this circumcision issue that came up amongst the congregations, notice what we read here in verse 2 of Acts 15.
Is it just me, or does he look really uncomfortable at this point? He looks at the camera like a deer in the headlights.
Now with this circumcision issue that came up amongst the congregations, notice what we read here in verse 2 of Acts 15. But after quite a bit of dissension and disputing by Paul and Barnabas with them, it was arranged for Paul, Barnabas, and some of the others to go up to the apostles and elders in Jerusalem regarding this issue. So the issue was going to be settled by the first century governing body, and now it's larger than the apostles. It included the elders and the apostles in Jerusalem. Now, what is the benefit of following the direction from the governing body in the first century, and by extension today? Notice in Acts 16, verse 4 and 5, they're carrying the decree there, and it mentions as they traveled on through the cities, they would deliver to them for observance, the decrees that had been decided on by the apostles and the elders who were in Jerusalem. Now notice, then indeed, the congregations continued to be made firm in the faith and to increase in number day by day. Isn't that beautiful? There was a governing body. They didn't have a need for legal entities to advance the kingdom work in the first century, but they did indeed need a governing body.
Well, there you have it. They needed a governing body. Tony Morris seems very convicted. No, he really doesn't. I'm sorry, I'm being a little sarcastic, because it looks to me like he is not convinced. He's stammering. He's not sure exactly what he believes. I can tell by the way he's looking at the Bible. It seems to me, from my vantage point, that he's not confident about the things that he's saying. He's saying what he was told to say by the teleprompter, what he has been taught to say by the other brothers surrounding him. And if he says anything else, then he'll no longer be on the governing body. But let's take a look at that text in Acts chapter 15. Let's look at it right from the Bible and see what he was quoting from. And you'll find that the word governing body doesn't exist there. The phrase doesn't. I've touched on this in the past. But in the front part, when they give you the contents of Acts, they talk about the governing body. It is in the contents of what's in Acts. If you look there at the beginning, let me just find it for a moment. Yeah, they call it the outline of contents. And you'll see there in that outline of context in chapter 15, they talk about a letter from the governing body. But that's not mentioned in the text. Let's take a look at Acts chapter 15. And here's what it says. If I read, just for context, I'll read verses 1 and 2. Now some men came down from Judea and began to teach the brothers, unless you get circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. But after quite a bit of dissension and disputing by Paul and Barnabas with them, it was arranged for Paul, Barnabas, and some of the others to go up to the apostles and elders in Jerusalem regarding the issue. Now, he said that the apostles and elders were the governing body. That's what Tony Morris said in his little dissertation there. And then he took us over to Acts chapter 16, and he read from chapter 16, verse 4, and it says, actually he read part of verse 5, but I want you to notice what it says. Verse 4 says, as they traveled on through the cities, they would deliver to them for observance the decrees that had been decided. It doesn't say by the governing body. It says by the apostles and the elders who were in Jerusalem. Then indeed the congregations continue to be made firm in the faith and to increase in number day by day. The interesting thing is, if we look back at Acts chapter 15, even in verse 22, here's what it says. Then the apostles and the elders, together with the whole congregation, decided to send chosen men from among them to Antioch, along with Paul and Barnabas. So, you see, these decisions weren't made just by a group called the governing body. There was no governing body mentioned. There's no governing body anywhere in the Bible. It was apostles and elders and others. So this was a group of people who made those decisions. It was made as a congregation, not as a closed or sealed group of men somewhere else making decisions for the rest of the congregations. It was made by people that came from other places. Paul and Barnabas came up there, and they all came together. But you see, the governing body today is a centralized group of men that are self-appointed. There's no appointment in the Bible for governing body members. I've touched on this in the past. We have in Timothy and Titus the qualifications for elders and ministerial servants. But where is the qualification for this most important duty of the governing body? And where do we find governing body anywhere in the Bible? We don't. But let's continue with this video.
As long as conditions in this world permit, the governing body will make use of legal entities. If a legal entity is dissolved by government decree, the preaching work will still go on. Even now, in lands where restrictions are in effect and no legal entities are used, the kingdom message is being proclaimed, disciples are being made, and theocracy's increase continues. In the midst of this pandemic, the preaching continues. Many experiences are happening globally.
So the preaching work continues. I haven't seen any carts. I've seen no one doing door to door. And I guess if you want to call the letter writing the preaching work, I suppose they are reaching some people that way. But really, are they experiencing a great increase? The numbers that we've looked at say that they're not. But let's continue in the video.
Now, one I received and confirmed from two elders serving at Warwick Bethel, I think you'll appreciate so much going on and so many nice experiences with a healthcare system that operates dozens of hospitals across the United States, and many of them were COVID hotspots. They wanted to publish a video interview featuring two frontline healthcare workers in one of the hospitals. Well, it happened that the two nurses they chose for the interviews were our brothers.
So the two nurses that they were going to interview were brothers. Don't you need an education to be a nurse? A quite extensive education for that matter? How do they do this? How do they pull up these experiences where these two nurses were brothers and they're telling you, don't worry about furthering your education, don't do that. But right here at an annual meeting, they're going to have this experience. And think about this. Listen carefully as you listen to this. He says there are many wonderful experiences coming in. Is this the best that they have in an experience? Listen to the outcome.
They were asked to supply pictures of their family. One of the pictures had been taken before the pandemic in front of a paradise scene in one of our assembly halls. Now, the woman coordinating the video interviews told the brother that she recognized that scene. So he asked her if she was a witness. She replied, "No, but I studied with the witnesses and I know it's the truth. I can see how close we are to the end." The brother then told her that be happy to know that the second nurse whom she had interviewed the day before was also a witness. Then the woman burst into tears. She said it made sense that the two nurses selected for this interview would both be witnesses. I can see it in your approach and the belief in something bigger than this. And she said she planned to resume her Bible study. So we pray for this woman and all the wonderful experiences happening as the preaching goes on during this pandemic.
So this woman, she had studied with witnesses before. She realizes the end is close. She believes it's the truth, but she still hasn't come to it. She continues to resume her study, but she hasn't done that yet. you would think that at an annual meeting they would be talking about this person was dedicated their life to Jehovah and was baptized. But no, this was the best they could muster up. I mean, that's my thinking. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm being overly critical. But friends, this organization is telling people things that seems are not true. They're saying that there's a governing body. It's obvious from the Bible that there's not. They're saying that they're growing. It's obvious from their numbers that they're not. We have to be honest with one another. And this, I believe, is why they're losing members day by day by day.
So this is all happening because Jehovah's Witnesses plant and water, and God keeps making it grow. All glory goes to Jehovah.
You know, I'm really surprised to hear him say, all glory goes to Jehovah, but maybe I'm being critical. It didn't seem sincere to me. I don't know. It just seems programmed. It seems mechanical. If you think I'm being overly critical, I want to apologize for that. I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm just calling it as I see it.
At this meeting, as was pointed out last year with the announcement about the Ramapo project, you will learn that the faithful slave is not slowing down. We have more work to do until Jehovah says the preaching work is finished. As we look to the future, we are confident that Jehovah will care for the spiritual and material needs of his people. He and his Son, Jesus Christ, will continue to provide the heavenly direction and support needed to complete the kingdom preaching work. We therefore beg Jehovah for his Spirit to finish the work he has given us.
I do believe there is a lot of work to be done before Christ can come. I believe that the end is ramping up. I think that people are looking around the world, they see things happening. We don't know when the end is coming, but we don't know when our last breath will be. So we need to be ready. If I die today, I can't change the outcome from there forward. So, friends, I hope you keep studying. I hope you will look at these things with a critical eye, that you'll pay attention to the things that they're saying, to the things that they're teaching that are not biblical. There was a lot of information in this annual meeting video. I just wanted to touch on a few remarks that Tony Morris made. I wanted to touch on this because they keep hammering that there was a governing body in the first century and that the governing body still exists today. I guess the question that I have is, where was that governing body from the time of the first century to the 1800s when the organization was established? Where was that governing body? What happened through that time of the Dark Ages? What took place? Why weren't they there? Because according to his comments, they existed for hundreds of years before 1800, and they existed all the way back for 1800 years from the first century. So, I don't know. These things are deceptive. He's trying to pass them off as fact, but I see no facts in the Bible that there is a governing body or that they existed. I hope this will help you to continue to study, to continue to challenge the things that you're told to believe, but challenge them from the Bible. We don't have to be critical of people, just challenge them with what they're saying from God's Word, the Bible. Remember, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through him, not through an organization. So I hope you continue to study, and may Jehovah bless you until we meet again.